Ethan. Spencer Lockridge's voice cracked like thunder through the mansion's marble halls. His Italian leather shoes pounded across the polished floors, echoing louder with every frantic step. The boy's wheelchair was overturned near the grand staircase, silent, still, abandoned. No child. The billionaire's breath caught in his throat. He reached out with trembling hands, his pulse roaring in his ears. His custom-tailored suit clung to him with sweat, though the air inside the estate was cold, unnaturally cold. A red toy block, slick with something wet, sat at the base of the staircase. Not blood, but close. His fingers grazed it, and he flinched at the chill. God, not today. Please. A high-pitched beat broke the silence. The security monitor behind him flickered to life. Hallway camera 3, motion detected. He spun around. The feed was grainy, but unmistakable. Ethan's small form wheeled down the corridor alone. No nurse, no staff. Just the boy, pushing himself shakily, foot dragging limply, eyes wide with something more than fear, desperation. And someone else, just beyond the camera's edge. A shadow. Spencer's stomach dropped. How? He'd hired the best nurses, the strictest security, the most advanced care. Ethan hadn't left his room willingly in months. He hadn't spoken in years. The grief clawed up Spencer's chest like a fire. He sprinted toward the hallway. Each door he passed thudded closed behind him, as if the house itself were trying to warn him. Pictures of his late wife stared back from the walls, smiling in frames that no longer brought comfort. He turned the corner and stopped. There she was, Alicia, kneeling on the floor in her black and white uniform, rubber gloves on, a red bucket beside her. Her dark skin glowed in the dim light. Calm, composed, serene. And Ethan, he was right in front of her. Tears streaked the boy's pale cheeks. His hands clutched her sleeve. He wasn't just near her. He was reaching for her, holding on. Spencer couldn't breathe. Alicia. His voice cracked again. What's going on? She looked up at him slowly, her eyes unreadable. He came to me, she whispered. He said he didn't want to be alone anymore. Spencer stared at his son. Ethan's lips trembled. His eyes, so long empty, were filled with something haunting. Emotion, connection, pain. Spencer dropped to his knees, stunned. He spoke. No, Alicia said gently. Not yet, but he's trying. Behind them, the security feed crackled again. The shadow figure was gone, but the sense of danger hadn't. Spencer looked back at Alicia. For a maid who'd only been hired last week, she was far too composed, too knowing. And Ethan had never crawled to anyone, not since the accident. The silence between them thickened. Then Ethan whimpered. Help me. It was barely a sound, almost imagined, but Spencer heard it. A single tear rolled down his face. His son was still in there, still fighting. But why now? Why her? What had changed? And as Alicia reached out again, whispering something he couldn't hear, only one thought echoed in Spencer's mind. But how did things get this bad? Before we continue, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's dive back into the story. It hadn't always been this way. Once, the Lockridge mansion echoed with laughter. Ethan had run through the halls in socks too big, dragging his blanket behind him like a cape. His mother, radiant and soft-spoken, had filled the rooms with warmth. Spencer had been a husband, a father, not just a billionaire juggling empire-sized burdens. Then the accident happened. A rainy highway, a late-night phone call, twisted metal, silence. Ethan survived. She didn't. Doctors said Ethan would walk again. Then they said he wouldn't. They said he would speak again. Then silence became his only language. Spencer never forgave himself. He'd been in a boardroom, arguing over stock prices, when the car crashed. He hadn't answered her last call. He never heard her voice again. Now, every day was a rehearsal of regret. He walked through the mansion like a ghost wearing $1,000 suit. He sat beside Ethan in the garden, but never knew what to say. The boy's eyes, once so bright, now stared past him. Hollow. Lost. I'm sorry, Spencer whispered to the child most nights, kneeling by his bedside. I'm so sorry. But guilt didn't feed Ethan. Guilt didn't teach him to speak. It didn't stop the nightmares. Some nights, Spencer found his son curled in the corner of his room, not in his bed. No words, no sounds, just shallow breathing and the quiet thud of his heartbeat beneath thin pajamas. Once, Spencer found uneaten food under Ethan's bed. Twice, he found torn photos of his late wife stuffed in the boy's pillowcase. And 3 times, Ethan tried to will himself into the hallway and was found collapsed, crying silently, shaking. No one saw. No one helped. Not really. Spencer hired the best. 5 nannies, 3 doctors, 2 private therapists, even live-in nurses. But each one left, one after another. They said Ethan was unreachable. They said he was too far gone. One nanny was cruel. She smiled when Spencer was around, but behind closed doors, she snapped. She yanked Ethan's tray away when he refused food, left him in cold baths, ignored his cries because they weren't loud enough to matter. Spencer only found out when he saw bruises on Ethan's arm. She was fired that same day, but the damage remained. The boy no longer trusted anyone, not even his father. And Spencer, he couldn't bring himself to look in the mirror. Grief sat on his chest like a heavy night, silent and smothering. No boardroom deal, no luxury car, no charity event could lift it. Not when his own son looked through him like he was invisible. So the mansion stayed quiet. No footsteps down the hall. No bedtime stories. Just a locked door, a broken boy, and a man who didn't know how to fix any of it. Until the day a stranger walked into their lives. Alicia Brooks arrived without fanfare. The mansion staff hardly noticed her at first. Just another uniformed maid with a quiet step and gentle smile. She moved like silk on polished floors, her presence soft, her eyes kind. Her skin was deep and rich like the soil after rain, and her voice, when she spoke, sounded like something between a lullaby and a promise. No one expected much. Certainly not Spencer Lockridge. He barely looked up when she was introduced by the head butler. He offered her a nod, distracted by calls and contracts. The new maid, Alicia Fine. Another employee. Another quiet shadow in a house full of them. But Ethan noticed. The first time Alicia passed him in the hallway, she slowed. Not to stare, not to speak, just enough to gently lower herself to his level. "Hello there," she said, her voice warm, low, calm, like it belonged in a nursery or a hymn book. She didn't reach for him, didn't force a smile, just placed a fresh flower on the tray of his wheelchair and walked on. Ethan blinked, then stared at the flower for nearly an hour. The next morning, she passed again. This time, she hummed something under her breath, an old hymn, half-whispered, half-sung, soft as a breeze through curtains. "Guide me, O thou great Jehovah." Ethan turned his head. By day 3, he waited for her. He didn't speak. Not yet. But he clutched the corner of her apron when she passed and didn't let go. When she wiped the windows, he wheeled beside her. When she mopped the hall, he sat quietly nearby, watching. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But something was changing. Spencer noticed. From his study window, he watched the way his son followed her, eyes wide, hands twitching. He hadn't seen Ethan react to anyone in years, not even family. And now a maid? He stepped into the hallway and cleared his throat. "Alicia, is it She stood up slowly, smoothing her apron. "Yes, sir. What exactly did you say to my son?" "I didn't say anything, sir. I just sat with him." Spencer's eyes narrowed. "He doesn't like people touching him." "I haven't touched him." She had, in fact. Ethan had leaned into her side that morning when no one was looking, but she didn't mention it. Instead, she looked Spencer straight in the eye and said, "Sometimes silence is the loudest way to listen." The words unsettled him. There was something in her, something calm but strong, like a woman who had carried loss and still found a way to sing. That night, Spencer heard Ethan laugh. Just once. Barely audible, but it was real. He hurried to the hallway, but Alicia was already gone. In her room, Alicia knelt beside her bed and whispered a prayer. "Use me, Lord, however you will. Let him feel you through me." Her fingers trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. Outside her door, Ethan sat silently in his chair, listening to her pray. He didn't understand all the words, but something inside him did, something deeper. And as the wind rustled the curtains in the long, grieving mansion, one thing became clear. But no one knew the power she carried inside her. There were rules in the mansion, unspoken ones, but clear. Don't crowd the boy. Don't ask questions. Don't touch him. Don't expect change. Alicia broke them, not out of rebellion, out of instinct. She found Ethan in the sunroom that morning, slouched in his chair, face turned toward the window like he was searching for something beyond the glass. She didn't announce herself. She simply walked in barefoot, carrying a bowl of warm water, a cloth, and a little jar of shea butter from her own room. Kneeling beside him, she touched her forehead gently to his. Her skin was warm, her breath steady. It was the kind of closeness that didn't demand, it gave. Quietly, completely. "You are not alone," she whispered, her voice no louder than the rustle of leaves outside. Then she began to hum, a soft melody drawn from deep African roots, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing in moments of pain. "Sleep, my child, the night has passed. You are safe in morning's arms." Ethan blinked. His lips trembled. Alicia dipped the cloth in the warm water and wiped his face slowly, carefully, as if touching something sacred. He didn't flinch. He didn't turn away. He let her. And then, just before she finished, his hand moved. A twitch, barely there, but it reached toward hers. Not full, not strong, but intentional. He reached for her. In the hallway, behind the cracked door, Spencer Lockridge stood frozen. He hadn't meant to spy. He was looking for paperwork, excuses, anything to keep himself distracted. But he'd heard the singing and followed the sound like it was calling something in him he didn't want to name. Now he saw it. His son, moving, reaching. His throat tightened. Hope. It used to feel like light. Now it felt like fire. Too dangerous to touch, too wild to believe in. He'd been burned before. Therapists made promises. Nurses smiled. But none of them had seen this. None had earned Ethan's gaze, his trembling touch. Spencer stepped back into the shadows, unseen. In the sunroom, Alicia opened the small jar and gently rubbed the shea butter onto Ethan's hands. Her voice never stopped humming. Her hands moved in rhythm with the song. Her spirit filled the space like a prayer whispered into walls that had forgotten how to breathe. Ethan's fingers closed slightly around hers. Just a little, but enough. Enough for Alicia to whisper, "Thank you, Lord." She kissed the crown of his head, slowly rose to her feet, and left him in the sunlight. Ethan closed his eyes and smiled barely, but real. Later that evening, Spencer stared at the untouched scotch in his hand. He hadn't spoken to Alicia, hadn't asked what she was doing. He didn't want to hope, because hope meant risk. Hope meant heartbreak, but something inside him shifted. Could it be real? Could one woman, a maid, do what doctors hadn't? Could his son come back? He leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. And then something happened that forced him to question everything. Spencer stood at the end of the corridor, jaw clenched, arms folded tightly. He had watched the footage 3 times. Alicia, barefoot again, kneeling beside Ethan, her hands on him, her lips near his ear, her presence everywhere. Too close, too much. He found her folding sheets in the linen room. "What do you think you're doing?" His voice was sharp, startling even the housekeeper nearby. Alicia looked up, unshaken. "Excuse me." "With my son," he snapped. "He doesn't need rituals or soft songs. He needs medical care." She set the sheets down carefully. "He needs to feel human again." "That's not your place," Spencer said coldly. "You're the maid." Her eyes didn't flinch. "I know who I am, Mr. Lockridge, and I know what I see in your son. He's not unreachable. He's afraid. There's a difference." Spencer took a step closer. "You don't get to play therapist in my house. This isn't." But his sentence was interrupted by the sudden sharp sound of heels clicking rapidly down the marble hallway. Dr. Halbridge, the family's longtime private physician, entered with a tablet in hand and her signature cool glare. "What's going on?" she asked, glancing between them. "Apparently," Spencer said tightly, "the new maid thinks she knows better than the people I've paid $500,000 to." Alicia stood tall. "With all due respect, doctor, have any of those methods worked?" Halbridge's jaw tightened. "Progress takes time." "It's been 3 years," Alicia replied gently. "He's a child, not a case file." There was a silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. Dr. Halbridge stepped closer to Alicia, her voice a low, controlled warning. "Stay in your lane." Alicia met her eyes, unwavering. "I only go where I'm needed." A beat passed. Then came a loud crash from down the hall. Spencer turned instantly and ran, the women close behind. In Ethan's room, they found the boy shaking. One of his toy trucks lay shattered on the floor. The pieces were small, sharp. He had thrown it. His hand still trembled in the air mid-motion, as if shocked by his own strength. He wasn't smiling today. His breathing was uneven, eyes glassy, sweat beading on his forehead. Alicia rushed forward, but Dr. Halbridge blocked her. "He's overstimulated," she said firmly. "You've pushed him too far." Spencer hesitated. Ethan let out a soft, broken sound, not a word, just pain. Alicia's hands trembled, but she stayed still. Dr. Halbridge turned to Spencer. "We need to reintroduce medication. This experiment ends today." Spencer stared at his son who had reached for someone, who had smiled, who now looked more terrified than ever. He didn't answer. That night, the mansion fell into silence again. Ethan wouldn't eat, wouldn't look at anyone, not even Alicia. The progress vanished like smoke, and Spencer, locked in his study, poured himself another drink he wouldn't finish. Something was breaking again, but this time Alicia wouldn't walk away. She knelt at her bedside in the dark and whispered, "Cover him, Lord. I won't stop." But the real fight had only just begun. It was Dr. Halbridge who said it first, reluctantly. "He's showing signs of increased motor engagement," she muttered, eyes fixed on the tablet screen. "Neurologically, something's shifting." Spencer raised an eyebrow. "Shifting?" The doctor looked uncomfortable. "He's reacting more to stimuli, responding to light, voluntary movement. It's different." "And you think it's medication?" She didn't answer. Instead, she added, "Whatever it is, it started about 10 days ago." Spencer froze. 10 days. Exactly when Alicia had arrived. That evening, Spencer returned to his study, not to drown himself in brandy this time, but to open a file. He pulled up Ethan's health logs, video feeds, reports. He stayed up for hours, piecing together every moment, every slight change. The pattern was undeniable. Whenever Alicia was near, Ethan showed life. Where others had failed with systems and schedules, she had touched something no chart could measure. By morning, Spencer found himself outside Ethan's room. He pushed the door open quietly. Inside, Alicia was seated on the floor, her back against the wall. Ethan was curled beside her, his head resting on her lap, hand clutching hers like a lifeline. The boy's breathing was steady. Calm. Safe. Alicia looked up when she saw him, but didn't move. Ethan stirred. His eyes opened slowly, and the moment he saw Spencer, his arms tightened around Alicia's waist. He buried his face in her side and shook his head gently. He didn't want to let go. Spencer stepped forward, but stopped. There was no jealousy in his chest, no anger, just something he hadn't felt in a long time, a crack forming in the stone of his heart. I should have listened, he said, voice low. Alicia rubbed Ethan's back slowly. You were hurting. So was he. I thought I could fix it with money, with experts, but it wasn't a strategy he needed. It was presence, she said quietly, just someone willing to sit in the silence with him. Spencer's throat tightened. He was always closer to his mother, he whispered. She could calm him with just a touch. I never knew how to reach him. You still can, Alicia said gently. His eyes welled. The first tear fell silently. Then another. I'm scared, he admitted. So is he, she replied. But he's trying. Ethan looked up then, right into his father's face. And for the first time in years, Spencer dropped to his knees. He reached out. Ethan didn't flinch. He let his father's hand rest on his shoulder. It was light, shaky, but it was enough. Spencer let out a slow, trembling breath. Maybe God had not forgotten his house after all. The room felt still, holy. Even the air seemed to pause. Later, Alicia tucked Ethan into bed and returned to her own room, unaware of the eyes that now watched her with something closer to awe than suspicion. Spencer stood outside the door for a long time. So much had changed. So much could change. Until the day everything changed forever. The house was quiet, but not with the heavy silence of grief. This time, it felt like something sacred was waiting to unfold. Ethan was in the garden. The autumn light bathed the grounds in gold, the breeze cool but kind. Alicia knelt beside him, hands gently guiding his fingers along the smooth wooden rails of a parallel bar Spencer had installed days ago. He had walked this path before, but only in therapy, only under clinical lights, with strangers and masks. This was different. Here, he was surrounded by life, flowers, warmth, and the soft hum of Alicia's voice. You don't have to rush, she whispered. Just breathe, one at a time. Ethan's lips trembled. His legs twitched. Sweat formed at his temple. But his eyes never left hers. Spencer watched from the balcony above, hardly breathing. Every fiber in him told him something was coming. He didn't know what, but he felt it pressing against the air like a rising tide. A single step. That's all it would take. Alicia steadied Ethan's elbow. 1 foot forward, she said softly. That's it, baby. Just one. Ethan blinked. His breath hitched. Then, he moved. His left foot, shaky, but firm, slid an inch forward. Alicia gasped, but held steady. Yes, just like that. She breathed. That's my boy. Ethan's lips parted. He exhaled slowly. Another movement. The right leg this time. 2 inches. Spencer's hand gripped the balcony rail until his knuckles turned white. But just as Ethan lifted his knee again, a sharp voice cut through the garden. What is this nonsense? Dr. Halbridge. She strode across the yard, clipboard in hand, expression cold. This is dangerous. He could fall. Alicia rose slowly, placing herself between the doctor and Ethan. He's not falling. He's walking. The doctor scoffed. This is irresponsible. I warned Mr. Lockridge. If something happens, the liability is on him, not you. Ethan flinched. His arms dropped. His knees buckled slightly. No, Alicia whispered, spinning back toward him. Don't listen. Keep going, sweetheart. You were doing it. But the boy's breath had quickened. His lips trembled again, but not with strength this time. With fear. The moment was slipping. Spencer ran. By the time he reached the garden, Alicia had dropped to her knees again, eyes locked with Ethan's, hands raised but not touching, waiting for permission. I believe in you, she whispered, no matter what anyone says. Ethan's chest rose and fell once, then again. His arms shook, but he gripped the bar again. And then, from behind them, Spencer spoke. I believe in him too. Alicia turned. Their eyes met. He stepped forward and placed his hand on Ethan's back, gentle, steady. I'm here, son. Take your time. The doctor stood frozen. The air shimmered with warmth, the kind that comes just before dawn. Ethan's foot shifted forward again. Then another. 3 steps. Alicia's hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes welled. Spencer swallowed hard. My God. Ethan looked up at them both, face flushed, breathing shallow, lips trembling, and smiled, just as the wind swept through the garden. And then came the moment no one expected. The house was silent, but it wasn't the silence of sadness anymore. It was the stillness before something sacred. Alicia stood beside the piano in the music room, her hands folded gently in front of her. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting golden shapes across the polished floor. Ethan sat in his wheelchair a few feet away, staring at the keys. Spencer leaned against the doorway, watching. No nurses, no therapists, just the 3 of them. Would you like to try? Alicia asked softly, nodding toward the piano bench. Ethan didn't move. Then, slowly, he nodded. Alicia gave no instructions. No rush. She simply stepped aside and waited. Ethan reached forward, fingers trembling, legs shifting. He pushed against the armrest of his chair. His feet touched the floor. Spencer stepped forward instinctively, but Alicia held up a hand. Let him. Ethan inhaled, and then, with a quiet grunt of effort, he stood, wobbly, fragile, but standing. Spencer's heart stuttered. He gripped the doorframe, blinking fast. Ethan looked at the bench, then at his father, then at Alicia. She smiled. 1 step. 2. The boy reached the piano, placed both hands on the edge of the bench, and lowered himself slowly until he was sitting. Spencer covered his mouth. Then, Ethan pressed a key. A soft note rang out. Then another, and another. A broken melody formed, halting, imperfect, beautiful. Tears streamed down Alicia's face as she stepped closer. She knelt beside him and whispered, You're doing it, baby. You're doing it. Ethan kept playing, fingers trembling. Then, his lips parted. A sound came out. Not a moan. Not a whimper. A word. Mama. Spencer gasped aloud. Ethan's head turned slowly toward him. His lips trembled again. Dad. Spencer couldn't hold it back. He dropped to his knees right there on the floor, covering his face as the sobs overtook him. Years of guilt, fear, and sorrow broke like a dam. Alicia reached for him with one hand, still holding Ethan with the other. They cried together, no shame, no silence, no fear. Ethan reached for both of them. His small hands rested on Alicia's shoulder, then Spencer's arm. 3 of them, kneeling, weeping, hearts finally open. In that moment, the room changed. The light seemed warmer, brighter. The air felt different, alive. It wasn't medicine that did this, not a program or a treatment. It was love, faith, presence. This was not science, Spencer whispered, still shaking. This was grace. No one spoke for a long time. There was only breathing, soft piano notes, tears on hardwood floors. Ethan placed his head on Alicia's shoulder. Spencer leaned forward and wrapped his arms around them both. The mansion, once filled with mourning, now held something else entirely. Redemption, healing, a miracle. And for the first time in a very, very long while, they were whole. Dr. Hal Bridge was gone by the end of the week. Spencer didn't fire her in anger. He simply handed her the footage. The recordings of Ethan walking, speaking, smiling. Miracles, she said, would never happen. She left without a word, and peace returned to the mansion like a soft wind. The days that followed were filled with small, sacred things. Ethan laughing in the sunroom, drawing with colored pencils, wheeling himself to the kitchen to ask for extra honey on his toast. He sang sometimes now, broken melodies, soft and unsure, but beautiful. One afternoon, Spencer found Alicia in the garden, wiping her hands on an apron, dirt on her fingers from planting lilies near the boy's favorite bench. "I've been thinking," he said, approaching her. She looked up, eyes gentle as always. "This isn't a job anymore," he said. "This is your home." She blinked, unsure. "You saved my son. You saved me." His voice caught. "Stay, not as staff, as family. Whatever you need, for the rest of your life, it's yours." Alicia's hand went to her chest. "Mr. Lockridge." "Spencer," he interrupted. She smiled softly. "Spencer." Ethan rolled toward them from the house, a drawing in his lap. He held it up proudly, a picture of the three of them, hand in hand under a blue sky. "I made us," he said. Alicia covered her mouth. Spencer knelt and took the picture like it was a sacred artifact. "You did perfect, son." Ethan beamed, then reached for both their hands and held them tight. There were no crowds, no headlines, no cameras to witness the transformation. But something holy had bloomed in the silence. In the space where pain once ruled, peace now lived. That Sunday, Alicia sat beside Ethan in the front pew of a small chapel on the hill. Spencer sat behind them, his hand resting on the back of the boy's chair. As the choir sang, Alicia closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not for rescue, but for gratitude, because the miracle had come, and not with thunder, not with lightning, just quiet love, unshakable faith, and the willingness to stay. Miracles don't always fall from heaven. Sometimes, God sends them quietly, dressed as the person we least expect. Love is the language that heals what science cannot.